most fundamental step to freedom is breaking free from your parents and your family system. And that is especially true for trauma, childhood trauma, if you've experienced any, wounding in childhood caused by your parents. It's normal to be terrified of it because there are good reasons for that. But if you never break free from them, then you will never experience true freedom. Even if you've already left, you moved far away, or you're on no contact, and even if your parents or caretakers are not alive anymore. I left my family, my country, my old life behind 15 years ago, and I never went back. I've been living a nomadic life ever since. But physically leaving turned out to be not enough. I kept being pulled back like on an invisible rubber band, which was quite literally true. And back then I didn't understand why. I thought I escaped the prison, but the prison was still there. It was inside of me. And most people actually never leave. They stay trapped because of loyalty, because of guilt, obligation, fear, trauma bonding. All of these things. It's because there are invisible chains binding you to them, binding you to the family system. And the family system lives inside of you, and that's also what keeps pulling you back. In this video, I explain why it's so difficult to break free, to cut the cords, to break the chains. What is there on an invisible and energetic level that keeps us bound to the parents, to the family system? I share parts of my own story, how I finally managed to break free, and the healing modalities that helped me. So if you have a difficult relationship with your parents or your caregivers, and it feels like you're trapped and imprisoned, then this video is for you. So what this video is not about, this is not about blaming and hating your parents and revenge or anything like that. It's also not about false love and light and forgiveness thing glossing over everything that happened and betraying yourself and everything that happened to you. It needs to be looked at. It needs to be acknowledged first and foremost by you. What it is about is that I show you the psychological and spiritual and energetic reasons that bind you still, no matter how old you are, to your parents, to your family system. There are unspoken rules. There are structures that hold it in place. And more than anything, there is a child in you, probably very wounded and scared child, but a child that still needs love and validation from its parents. And that's an impossible dream because it probably will never get it, but it's still waiting for it. And there is a fierce loyalty. So this is about reclaiming your life, the right to live your life the way that you want, that your soul wants for you, that makes you happy, that is your heart's desire, and not what your family expects from you, or staying physically close to them and sacrificing everything for them. And on the other side of the spectrum, what I've done to just keep running away and escaping and like physically moving really far away, but inside you're still trapped. If you're watching this video, then the hardest part of it you're already doing, which is becoming aware. It's incredibly difficult to become even aware that something may not be right, that maybe something is not right about your relationship with your parents, and let alone that there might have been some severe wounding and maybe even trauma that happened, and let alone becoming aware of things like having childhood trauma, developmental trauma, attachment trauma, and insecure attachment styles, and whatever happened, emotional, psychological, or sexual abuse. neglect, parentification, any of these things. It's really hard. It's really hard to become aware. It's really hard to admit that to yourself. So if you're watching this, then congratulations, you're already doing the hardest thing. The reason why it's so difficult is that the child that you once were and that still lives in you as inner child needs to believe about his or her parents that they love him or her, that they are the loving parents that the child needs. It needs to stay attached to the parents no matter what, because parents are survival, you know, and a child cannot go out at 4 or 5 or 6 years old and move out or anything. So, you know, whatever happens, and the parents are very, you know, they're abusive, they're highly critical, they're narcissists, there's emotional neglect, like any of these things, like the child cannot understand and cannot admit to itself that there is something deeply wrong, that they're dysfunctional, that the family system maybe is highly dysfunctional. So it will internalize it, it will blame itself. Okay, then there's something wrong with me. If my parents don't love me and hug me and are nice to me and or, you know, show care and interest in me and my inner world, then there's something fundamentally wrong about me. And it will develop sophisticated survival and coping mechanisms like denial, like this is not happening, it's all good, you know, and magical thinking, fantasy, like a fantasy bond. A fantasy bond is when, you know, the child sees the relationship to the parent like as idealized, like my parents love me, I have a great father, I have a great mother, and makes them into a fantasy that has absolutely nothing to do with reality. And then later, when you're grown up, by the way, you transfer that fantasy bond and then to your romantic partners. And you see them through rose-tinted glasses and through filters of, you know, illusion and even delusion sometimes, and complete magical thinking that has nothing to do with reality, because once that coping mechanism saved you, it protected you, because psychologically it would have been impossible. It would have destroyed you as a child. And then you grow up and you keep denying everything, you keep normalizing it and minimizing and thinking that you are the problem and you're the bad guy here. And then the tragedy is that society and religion and things like that, they reinforce that. Because even when you start to realize that something might be wrong, and maybe you reach out to people, to friends or whatever, and you say, okay, I don't think that it's okay what my mother does to me, how my father treats me, because this and this happened. And it's very likely that they just don't have the capacity, and they are programmed themselves to really receive what you're saying. So they say things like, oh, but how can you say that? She's your mother, she loves you. And, oh, you're ungrateful, look what your parents do for you. You know, all these things. And there is a deep societal and especially religious programming of you need to be grateful that they, you know, gave you life and they can do nothing wrong. And if there is anything wrong, then it's basically your fault. And it's really a tragedy, because you are the victim here, but you are made into the villain. Like, how can you say that? And, you know, you show the courage to speak up, and then they make you into the bad guy. And that's a tragedy, and it's a betrayal. Because you are then the difficult one, you are ungrateful, you're selfish, like how can you do that to your family, and so on and so on. And when you don't say anything, you know, you stay silent, that's very, very common. Because you are very deeply programmed into not upsetting the apple cart, not rocking the boat. There is, in dysfunctional families, there is what I call toxic silence. No one talks about it, like don't speak, and everything is swept under the rug. And like, don't upset your mother, don't say anything, don't make father angry. And of course, in these kind of families, they are very good in guilt tripping and in shaming and blaming you. You know, you are made the scapegoat, for example. You are the black sheep, you are the problem here. So you doubt yourself and you feel ashamed and you feel guilty. So everything I just said is very real on a psychological and emotional level. All that, the trauma, the dysfunctional family patterns, the guilt tripping, the attachment, all of these things. But that is, at least for me, still not enough. And it's also not enough to just know about it. I mean, of course, you can start your healing work when you get aware. It's very, very important that the mind, understands and becomes aware of that. But for true liberation, for true freedom, you need to look at the spiritual and the energetical level, because that's where the real prison is, and that's where you're bound and entangled the most. So just to briefly share my own story, my father died when I was barely 17 years old. There was a lot of trauma already before, abandonment, and he started because he was deeply, deeply traumatized and broken and dysregulated himself. So he yelled at me, he hit me, and he was emotionally unavailable and distant. And he never told me once that he loved me, not even when he was dying. And just these months between the diagnosis that he had a brain tumor and then him dying, that alone created another huge trauma for me. And then I was alone with my mother and my sister. And then already with my mother, there was a very difficult relationship. There was covert narcissism, there was enmeshment, it was very engulfing, very suffocating. I wasn't really allowed to be my own self, to to become independent, to live my own life. Every time I tried to move out, to go somewhere else, to go traveling, to move to a different city, I was met with absolute psychoterror. Because of, not only because of that psychological and emotional pattern between us, but especially because of the spiritual and energetic one. There was a huge entanglement. There was a karmic binding between us and karmic vows and all of that. And more than anything, there was, through that daughter-mother womb connection, there was a huge entanglement with my maternal bloodline. And on that maternal bloodline, there was a lot of darkness. There was intergenerational trauma, there was witchcraft, curses, spells, entities, it was really, really dark. And I had no idea. And then at some point, when I tried to really break free, and I was already beginning of my 30s when I left my old job, my old life and everything behind, and it was meant to be a 3-month backpacking trip through Southeast Asia, which then turned into 15 years of living a nomadic lifestyle. Back then, of course, I didn't know that. And that was in and of itself, it was escaping. I didn't do that out of joy, out of curiosity to want to explore the world. That was there too. But mostly it was a desperate attempt to break free, a desperate attempt to break free from that prison. And yet, I started healing then after a few years with, inner child healing, reparenting, getting my fragmented soul parts back, the exiled inner child, lots, and the ancestral healing and all of these things. And I started to understand what was going on. I woke up after a few years into that nomadic life to the truth about who she was and about our relationship and the entire family system. And the truth about my father started to come up when I did a 10 days silent meditation retreat. Lots of memories started to come up, traumatic memories, and there was a lot of unprocessed grief and regret and anger. And anyway, it was just like whoosh, it was coming up quite strongly, and it took many, many years for me to dismantle the layers, to peel them off, to start the healing work, to transmute all that. And simultaneously the connection with the bloodlines and the ancestors, because again, it did not start with your parents. It did not start with your grandparents, I guess. You know, at some point something bad happened and you were at the receiving end as the descendant. So anyway, this whole time, I knew consciously, I knew the truth. I had a terrible time every time I was there, and yet something kept pulling me back. And I could not understand really, like, why am I, like, I didn't really question it even. Like, I kept coming back, like, out of, yeah, obligation, and I need to visit, and da-da-da, and the whole thing started all over again. Over the years, it became a little bit better the more healing work I did, especially the ancestral healing, but it was still no fun. And yet, something kept pulling me back. And for me, that had a very specific reason that I haven't even mentioned yet, but it is true, I think, for everyone, that no matter how old you are, no matter if you live on the other side of the world, no matter if you're no contact, no matter if your parents are still alive or not, there is a psychic, energetic, emotional, and spiritual entanglement that needs to be cleared and healed for if you ever want to be truly free and truly in your own power, in your own sovereignty, and live your life, not theirs. And it's so crucial to start healing your inner child, to start the reparenting work, to become your own loving parent, and to give yourself the love and validation that it never got, or that you never got from your parents or caretakers, because that wounded child is still in you. That wounded child is still loyal to them. That wounded child has still the impossible dream that if I'm only good enough, then I will get their love and approval. Then finally my father will tell you that he's proud of me. Then finally mother will tell me that, you know, whatever, that she loves me and that I'm good enough. And again, if you live in a dysfunctional family and your parents or whatever, and they're just simply not capable of that, because then by now they would have changed or done their own healing work. So you can wait forever. That inner child can wait forever, and nothing will ever change. And then not only that, you are bound to them with that guilt and the loyalty and the obligation and waiting for the love and approval. But more than that, you transfer that pattern into all other relationships. Like, for example, there is the boy who never heard from his father that he's good enough and that his father is proud of him. So maybe he works himself to death in his job because he finally wants to hear, you know, praise from his boss, and that his boss tells him, oh, you're so great, he's the best employee we ever had. You know, or accumulating money and status symbols and success and followers and all of that, because there is a huge hole inside where there should have been unconditional love, validation and approval from your parents, but you never got it. So you try to get it unconsciously from anything and everyone outside of yourself, or the woman, or, you know, whatever, that has clearly daddy issues. Daddy never really loved her and told her that she is beautiful and intelligent and valuable, and that any man could be happy if he ever has her as his partner, and that never happened. So she's trying to get that through constant romantic relationships. And I'm sorry, I'm speaking very heteronormative here, because I am, and that's my experience. I have no idea how it is with same-sex relationships, if it's the same-sex parent that causes that, because usually, again, it's the father for the girl, the mother for the man. But, you know, I guess it could be the same-sex parent, but yeah, don't quote me on that. I really don't know, and I apologize for. So yeah, I cannot stress it enough how important it is that you become your own loving parent, and that you give your inner child the love and validation and approval that it never got, and become more and more whole within yourself, develop a secure attachment style so that you know, if you're anxiously attached, you will always attach very quickly to anyone, and like you're very needy and clingy and please love me, which of course repels people or attracts avoidance. And if you're avoidant, you know, then you're hyper independent and you don't, you know, if someone comes too close, there's too much intimacy, like you cannot stand it, and you will pull away, you know, or whatever. There's a mix of both. So all of these things need to be looked at and healed if you want to have good relationships, romantic relationships and other healthy relationships as an adult. And you need to become your own loving parent in your own safe home, because the child also never had a safe home and probably unconsciously is looking for that safe home in all the wrong places. Maybe you're also, like me, very restless. You never live longer anywhere than a couple of months or a year. And then, you know, you're always chasing the perfect home where you can finally be happy and feel safe. But you will never find it if you don't heal that wound inside of yourself to make yourself the safe home for your inner child. And you don't abandon yourself anymore, especially when life is difficult, especially when, you know, the problems and relationships are failing and you're fired from your job and, you know, whatever else happens. Like, especially in these situations, it's crucial that you don't abandon yourself, that you stay with that inner child that experiences all of that the most, that suffers the most, that is so scared, that also still feels all the guilt and the shame because, you know, whatever happened once. And especially if there is still contact with the parents, they probably don't change. They still do their thing. They still criticize you and guilt trip you and shame you, and, you know, whatever your role within the family system you might have. There is, of course, the scapegoat or the black sheep or the golden child or the forgotten child. I'm not going into that exact dynamics now, or, you know, the savior, the rescuer, the perpetrator, the victim. There's so many roles within dysfunctional family systems. I mean, you can look at that too, but it doesn't really matter which one you have. And when you're watching this, you're probably the black sheep. But they all have in common that you simply need to heal your wounded inner child. Love it unconditionally. Give it a safe home within yourself. And then feel that guilt and that shame and the anger and even hatred, you know. It's very, very normal that these feelings come up at some point towards them, towards your parents, towards your family. And it is absolutely imperative that you let that come up. You hold space for yourself and your inner child. You let yourself feel all that. You say to your inner child, you are safe in me to feel this. I see you. I will never judge you. I will never abandon you. You are allowed to feel that. It is absolutely normal. It is human. Of course you feel that. Of course you are angry. Of course you feel that hatred towards them now. Like, do not suppress it. Do not shame yourself and your inner child for feeling that, and just stay with it. And that is only possible when you do that healing work and the reparenting work. It's also called shadow work. Like, look at the shadows within yourself, that negative emotions and the negative ego parts, everything that you'd rather not look at, you know, and that you'd rather not have, because you want to think of yourself that you are a nice guy or, you know, a nice girl or whatever, and you're like a good person. And I mean, you are. Like, let's be very clear about that. You are. And there is nothing wrong with you. Absolutely nothing. But these parts need to be acknowledged. These parts need to be looked at. These feelings need to be felt and witnessed. Because it's mostly, again, it's your inner child that feels all that. Do not suppress it any longer. Do not deny any longer. Do not push it away any longer. And if there was really like trauma, like bad stuff happening, and it's overwhelming and you feel like this is too much, then please get help. Like get a trusted trauma therapist or somatic therapist or internal family system or anything like that, you know? Like it's really hard to go through that on your own like I had to. You can also do, like, again, on the spiritual and energetic level, you need to look at the entanglement. Maybe there is literally still like a umbilical cord that tethers you to your mother and to the maternal line, especially when you're a woman, or any kind of heavy dark cords that bind you to your parents and therefore to your bloodlines. This is very, very real, and it took me many, many years to break free and to heal that and to transmute that. I mean, you can start to look into that. You can get a shamanic practitioner or an energy healer that you trust to look at this. They can see that. They can see these what's usually invisible, these cords, these bonds, these bindings, and cut them and dissolve them and transmute them. And also starting to heal, very highly recommended the ancestral and intergenerational trauma, because it ends with you. Like you need to be very, very aware that none of this has been an accident or random. It's not a punishment that you incarnated into this family with these parents just to randomly suffer, you know. It's highly likely when you're watching this that you are, you know, an old soul, a light worker, whatever you want to call it. You have the light and the love and the spiritual strength and capacity to incarnate into that family system and transmute it from the inside out. You transmute and release that darkness, whatever there is, whatever specific flavor yours has. You are the circuit breaker. You are the one that ends this. It ends with you. And you are not bad. You are not a bad person, no matter how often you heard that or you tell yourself that. You are a badass. If anything, you are a super badass spiritual warrior, because that is not easy. That is a very, very hard spiritual task that your soul chose. Because then you have to go through all of that trauma, all the consequences in real life, the failed relationships, the failed jobs, the lack of money, the whatever it is. You have to go through all of that. And then you have to become aware, and then you have to start the healing journey. This is very, very difficult, and most people don't do that. Most people stay stuck, stay trapped, stay, you know, in their guilt, in their toxic loyalty to them, in their obligation, and they never live the life that is truly meant for them. But you're different. I also strongly would recommend to look at vows, karmic vows, unconscious vows that you once made, whether it was in your childhood or in another life. Also soul contracts, because you can always change that. Like, for example, if a vow was something like, I will save my parents, they are unhappy and so I'm gonna absorb everything, I'm gonna take everything on, I'm gonna rescue them from their misery because it's my job to make them happy. Like, that is one of these unconscious vows that we often do as a child. So start to look into that, become aware. What is the belief, what is the fateful choices you once may have made? And you can always undo them. You can always take your conscious, sovereign free will and you say, I no longer choose that. I no longer consent to that. I release the vow that I once made, whether it's in this life or another, that I have to rescue my parents, that I have to stay bound to them, or that I am responsible for saving the entire bloodline and I have to carry all of that trauma and all of that baggage. You can always choose differently, and you can always release that. And more than anything, you can always choose yourself, and you should choose yourself, your freedom, your peace, your happiness, your well-being. good healers or shamanic practitioners can see that. They can cut these cords, remove the hooks, help you to release these contracts, these karmic vows, these agreements. Also look at the karma. Like very, very often, and this sounds so far out there, but it's very, very common actually, that when you have a difficult relationship with your parents in this life, that in another life, that you maybe were once, I mean, it could have been that you were parents and child, but reversed roles or spouses or anything like that. But it could have also been that you were really horrible enemies and you killed each other. There was, there was murder, there was betrayal, there was like maybe, whatever happened. It is quite common that, you played these roles over and over again, and there is a lot of accumulated karma. And I'm not talking about bad karma, like punishment, like you're punished for anything. It's more about balance. So, I mean, if you're drawn to that, I would recommend a past life regression to help you understand what happened between you and your mother, between you and your father. Did he murder you in a past life? Did you murder your mother in a past life? Was there, betrayal? What was there? It is very helpful sometimes when you, in deep hypnosis, you see that. And the facilitator will help you to not only see it, but release it, and release the karma and choose peace. Because that is what it is ultimately all about. That is why you chose them as parents and why you chose to incarnate in that family, because, again, only you can do it. And because all of that darkness needs to be transmuted, but more than anything, there needs to be peace. There might be karmic loops open, unfinished business, and it's always the same thing in the end. Light needs to be brought into that dark, meaning when you don't know, you have no idea what's going on, the light of your awareness. Just by witnessing it, just by looking at it, you bring a light and it starts shifting. You open your heart towards yourself, towards them, and you zoom out, and on the bigger picture is that, oh my God, maybe this has been going on for eons, and where did it start? Like, in one life I was the bad guy and did it to them. Now they're doing it to me. Like, it really helps to see the bigger picture sometimes for choosing peace and forgiveness. And one word about forgiveness. Forgiveness is incredibly healing. It is the number one thing that transmutes a karma between people and creates peace. But the problem is, especially in spiritual communities and love and light circles, it's all about love and light and forgiveness and glossing over anything, and you're not allowed to talk about bad stuff and bad feelings, or let alone say, well, I'm so angry and I hate them. Like they will probably shame you for it, or it's just completely ignored, which is very not good in and of itself. But forgiveness is not a one-time thing, and the bigger the trauma, like whatever terrible stuff happened and they've done to you, it's very difficult, because we're human. You're a human being, You're not like an angel or a god. It's very normal that there are a lot of very heavy and very difficult emotions and thoughts, and there is anger, there is hatred, there is guilt, there is shame, there are conflicting emotions. There's still like, that part in you loves them and wants them to love you, and at the same time there is rage and hate and shock and whatever. And then there is guilt, and then there is shame. Like it's a huge convoluted mess. And it's very important that you let yourself feel all that it usually doesn't come up all at once. It's too much, so it comes up in layers. And it's very important, again, that you stay with yourself. You don't abandon yourself. You stay with your inner child. You let yourself feel all that. You witness it, and maybe ideally you have support, a good therapist or something that witness it with you. Because it's hard. It's hard to do that, and it's hard to go through all of that, especially alone. So you can just start, if you you don't have to, but if you feel like, then you can just say something like, I'm willing to start the process of forgiveness. And that's good enough. And it might take years, and again, there might be, then you might have moments where when you start to understand that your parents were also, traumatized by their parents and neglected and mistreated and abused. And, I had moments many times where my heart broke for what my father and my mother had to go through. I wept for them. That the compassion is there. But then in other moments, there is again the old rage and anger, and why did they do that? Why did they treat me that way? And again, that's the inner child. Like, you are not just this or that. Like, you are the soul with a big heart, with love and compassion. That love and compassion and forgiveness is what heals everything. It heals you, it heals the karma, it heals the bloodlines, it heals everything. But at the same time, you need to do the shadow work. You need to wade through the mud. You need to feel the rage and the anger and all of that. There's just no way around it. So let forgiveness unfold naturally. Take the time that it needs. And if it never really happens completely, that's okay too, If you never really reconcile with your parents, if you stay no contact, if you never talk to them again, like you just do you just do what feels right for you, not what love and light people say, not what religion says, not what your therapist says, not what mainstream says. Like, you do you, what feels right to you. And sometimes just doing that work on an energetic and spiritual level, but on a physical level, there is absolutely no contact or whatever, that is way enough. And you also don't have to go back there just because it's Christmas or Easter or Thanksgiving or whatever. If they still treat you like shit, if they still criticize you, if they still make fun of you in front of everyone, there's the stupid comments, all of that. You don't have to. You are an adult. You are a grown-up, and you have every right to set boundaries and to say no and to prioritize yourself. And, you fly to a tropical island for Christmas and instead of visiting them. You have the right to do that. What feels impossible is, that because of that guilt, because of that loyalty of the inner child still to them and to the family, again, look at that, acknowledge it. But you have the right, the power, and the sovereignty as an adult now to choose yourself, to choose differently, and to do whatever the fuck that you want. And a few recommendations for healing modalities. Yes, forgiveness, I just talked about it. I already talked about the cord cutting, the soul retrieval on an energy or shamanic or spiritual level, the releasing of all these old contracts and vows and oaths and anything that is no longer serving you. Literally look at the umbilical cord that maybe is still there, because that was I forgot the whole thing. That was what kept me pulling back across 15 years, despite all the inner work I've done, all the ancestral healing, all the cord cutting, everything. I just kept coming back. And very recently I found the last soul part. That was a baby part that was still in her womb, that was never born. I had to finally cut these cords after 46 years and retrieve that part. And I'm finally only now whole and complete. And that was the invisible rubber band that kept pulling me back and back and back. So, that was due to prenatal trauma and, whatever else. And that is probably not very common, but you can look at this, Any good energy healer, any good practitioner, facilitator can see these things. And that cord needs to be cut. The contracts need to be released. The karma needs to be looked at. Again, forgiveness, all of these things. What is also very, very helpful, again, inner child healing, reparenting, internal family system or inner parts work, help you to look at all these different parts in you. Shadow work. Like, again, look at the difficult, dark, negative emotions and so on, and hold space and allow yourself to feel all it and bring light into the dark by becoming aware, by feeling all of it. There's Gestalt therapy. There is somatic work, very, very important for embodiment, you know, like, because especially when you do heavy inner work about the spiritual and energetic level, at least I did that, and I think it's common that we kind of neglect the whole physical part. So grounding it into the body, you know, letting these energies move through your body, because they're also stuck in your body, in the somatic layer. So it's very important that you basically flush them out. And any kind of somatic modality can be very helpful. Somatic experiencing, somatic shaking, somatic trauma therapy, any kind of body work. And what is very, very common is, and I think a very good thing, is family constellation work. I think he's called Bert Hellinger, who developed that. It's in a group much more powerful when you have other people, mostly strangers, representing your family members, and you move them around in the room. And like, many times I've been a witness to this, and it was incredible. It was incredible to watch what would come up, like dark family secrets and dynamics that would have stayed hidden for forever. Like, it's amazing what comes up. I also did myself ancestral systemic constellation work with, you know, the generations are represented by either people or objects like stones. Like, this stuff comes up then, and this is the whole point. Again, this is more like an ancestral healing thing, but if there is a dysfunctional family system, there's lots of trauma, you know, that's the parents, then that's the grandparents. And where did it start? There is a pattern. There is some toxic silence around whatever happened. There might be family secrets, taboo things, like all of this needs to be brought up into the daylight. This needs to be brought up in order to be looked at and healed and released and transmuted. And you, when you're watching this video, again, you are unfortunately the one who has to do that, because only you can. The more I've done that work over so many years, and the more I've healed now, I realize how multi-layered that is, how kind of complicated and mysterious, and nothing is really ever black and white. If you see it psychologically or spiritually, energetically, whatever, it doesn't matter. But one thing is clear, it's not about rejecting your parents, rejecting your family, let alone hate, revenge, or anything, or blame. It's not about blaming either. It's quite the contrary. You bring light into it. You bring healing into it. You start to open your heart for the wounded child that you were, but also for the wounded child that they once were. And you start to see what happened. And I mean, it just goes on and on. Where did it start? You probably don't know, but you do know that it ends with you. You are the chain breaker. You are breaking free, not for yourself only, but especially for everyone who comes after you and for everyone who came before you. And it's about your life, your freedom, your sovereignty. When you break free, then finally your true soul, your true essence can fully ground itself into your body, can fully be embodied, and will then start to awaken in you your true gifts, you know, your soul memories, your purpose in life. It will start to become clear to you why you're here. And you can then follow that, and your life will become much more aligned. It's all about alignment, you know, and everything that is no longer serving you, and relationships and old connections, anything that is no longer aligned with who you are and who you really are and who you're becoming, will fall away. And that is not always easy either. but it's so, so worth it. That healing work to really reclaim your freedom and cut the cords with your parents and the family system, that will be probably the most important work you will ever do and the most fundamental step to your freedom. If you take one thing away from this video, then it's you are not trapped, you are not doomed, you don't have to continue this. You can break free simply by choosing yourself now and choosing your own freedom. I choose myself, I choose my freedom, I choose alignment with my soul's path, and I break free, no matter what it takes. And you can choose unconditional love, you can choose forgiveness, all of that is fine. But you need to do the work. So I hope this was helpful, and it's not easy. This is not an easy topic, and I understand and I know from myself this has been a long process, and I really wish you all the best and get support if you can. And I want you to know that you can do this. You have the power to do this. You have the spiritual fortitude to do this. You're a badass spiritual warrior. Otherwise you wouldn't be here. And I send you so much love. And please, I always forget that. Please like, subscribe, share, write me comments. I'm so happy to hear from you. And yeah, I wish you a great day. And I send you so much love. Bye-bye.